Me29F, new president of Apex Flow, Analytics in Seattle, got the spot because my uncle was a primary investor and pulled some strings before cashing out. He told me to just keep the wheels turning and not touch the mainframe. Classic boomer mindset. Didn't get my degree to just maintain the status quo. I came to revolutionize and deconstruct. My online bio says progressive change architect, disruptor, she/. They walk into the main office on my first Monday. We build back-end inventory systems for regional grocery networks. Our software handles half the produce distribution in the Pacific Northwest, completely unsexy, totally hidden. Prints ridiculous money, swipe my keycard and step onto the development floor, instantly hit by a wall of pure testosterone. Smells like stale energy drinks, cheap body wash, and zero sunlight. The whole place is dead silent. Look out at the sea of cubicles, white dudes, Asian dudes, Indian dudes. Zero female energy anywhere, except the completely zoned out girl at the front desk. This isn't a tech firm, it's an esports locker room. My skin literally crawls, make a promise to myself on the spot. My true mission is to sanitize this environment. I will bleach the bro culture out of the carpets if it kills me. First week vibe, check schedule, a mandatory company-wide huddle, hop onto a desk to address the masses. 60 guys stare at me, some look annoyed. I pulled them from their screens, others just look lost. Nobody is giving supportive energy. Tell them hi, I'm the new boss, stepping in for my uncle, get a couple polite nods. Tell them I spent the past few days taking notes on the floor. Announce I am deeply troubled by the sterile, robotic atmosphere. The senior back-end architect raises his hand. Arthur, early 40s, balding, wearing a faded arcade hoodie, asks what I mean by robotic. He says we literally just write supply chain. Algorithm says pallets of canned beans don't have emotions. They have delivery routes. Some of the younger devs snicker. I give him an icy smile. Tell him that's the exact toxic mindset we have to fix. Tell him he treats the supply chain like a spreadsheet, but food distribution is about human connection. Arthur looks bored and says the software optimizes travel distance and fleet diesel usage. Says if we change the code to care about feelings, the cost of bread skyrockets. I stare holes through his skull. He doesn't blink, just takes a gulp of his monster energy, mentally lock onto him. As target number 1, announce to the room that a paradigm shift is coming. We are adopting an empathy-driven coding structure. Crickets tell them they can go back to their desks. Every guy spins back to their monitors in unison. No clapping, no questions. Just instant keyboard, clacking, feels like they are trying to drown out my existence. March straight to my office and dial. HR, head of HR, is this guy, Todd, who has been around for 12 years. Tell Todd I need a demographic breakdown on my desk in 5 minutes. He brings the folder, 94% male. I am practically shaking. Tell him this is a disaster, and we are harboring a toxic monoculture. Todd shrugs and says, it is industry standard, says they hire based on a strict Python exam, and women just don't take it. I yell that the exam is inherently biased. Todd says it's literally just math and syntax. It either works or throws an error. I tell him algorithms are a language, and language is patriarchal. Tell him if men wrote the test, it naturally screens out diverse candidates. Todd stares at me, like I just claimed the sky is green. Hand him his termination papers. The next morning, bring in my old college roommate Chloe to replace him. Chloe holds a master's in systemic workplace equality. We sit in my office to strategize, tell Chloe. The situation is dire, and the negative aura is suffocating. She says the office layout is fundamentally hostile and needs softening. I tell her, we need to rip out the weeds first month. One is officially the great restructuring. Tell Chloe to run a deep dive on the Microsoft Teams. Chat logs, tell her to go back 4 years and find anything problematic. We hit the absolute mother lode. Find devs spamming Pepe memes in 2020. Find guys ranking female video game characters on tier lists. Find massive arguments complaining about forced inclusion in Marvel movies. We draw up an immediate termination. List, pull them into the office one by one. First up is Kevin, the lead server administrator. Tell Kevin we pulled a chat log from 2020, where he called the Ghostbusters reboot absolute garbage. Kevin blinks and says, It was just a terrible movie, Chloe writes on her clipboard, and calls it a subtle attack on female-led media. Kevin says he is the only guy who understands the load balancing for the entire cloud infrastructure. Asks if I am seriously firing him over a movie review. Tell him we are pivoting to a team that shares our inclusive corporate vision. Kevin chuckles and stands up. Tells me good luck with the weekend server. Loads casually mentions the traffic routing script is manual and he never automated it. Walks out the door. I feel an absolute high of taking control. We axe 10 senior developers by the end of the week, mostly the loud guys, the ones who push back, the ones who try to correct me by Friday afternoon. The floor is dead quiet. But the vibe feels way less oppressive. Feel like I can finally breathe. Arthur bursts into my office looking absolutely livid, yells that I just fired Kevin and the entire back-end security team. I tell him to take a breath and respect the restructuring. He asks who is going to patch the security vulnerabilities. This weekend, tell him we will figure it out. And it's not brain surgery. Arthur yells that it is literally advanced cryptography. Chloe steps forward and tells him to lower his voice. Immediately tells him. His tone is creating an actively hostile workspace. Arthur's face turns beet red and he storms out. Slamming the door, turn back to Chloe with a smile. She says, we need to start onboarding replacements immediately. Says, we don't just need coders, we need free thinkers. Month 2, time for the new blood. I personally trash the old hiring templates. Old ad required 6 years of C#, SQL, and proven history scaling enterprise databases. New ad calls for digital empaths and narrative weavers. Says we prioritize collaboration, instinct, and tearing down structural norms. Explicitly states lived truths matter more than algorithms blasted all over. TikTok, Threads, and indie Reddit boards, resumes pour in, formatted with pastel fonts and sunset gradients. It brings a tear to my eye. First up is Lily, 24, rocking a Destroy the Patriarchy. Totebag asks her to walk me through her programming history. She says separating art from technology is a toxic binary, says she considers syntax to be a form of abstract expressionism, explains her portfolio is entirely based on tweaking Neopets profiles and custom WordPress themes, ask her what her protocol is for a massive database failure. She says she would first center the team's emotional response, then approach the database with healing energy, asks why the database failed, was it feeling unheard? We must honor its boundaries. I literally get goosebumps hire her on the spot. For Principal Cloud Architect, starting base is 135,000 next. In the chair is Taylor identifies as gender fluid, uses XE/XM pronouns, holds a master's in intersectional cyber anthropology. Ask Taylor for XIR thoughts on grocery distribution networks. Taylor says moving produce across state lines is inherent imperialism and hyper-consumerism, says XE wants to engineer a system that actively resists the urge to transport goods at all absolutely breathtaking perspective. Offer Tim. The director of engineering role immediately salary jumps to 155,000. Skylar walks in next, carrying a certified emotional support. Iguana sits in total silence for 6 solid minutes, just absorbing the room's aura, finally whispers that coding must flow from the heart chakra, not a manual, claims reading standard documentation, is submitting to male-dominated thought prisons, instantly hired as senior lead programmer. We pack all 10 open spots in less than 14 days. The workspace is completely unrecognizable. Now tear down all the rigid desk partitions, install communal hammocks, massive floor cushions, and soundproof meditation pods, swap the harsh overheads for Himalayan salt lamps and string lights. Place is super dim, cozy, and smells heavily of Palo Santo and eucalyptus. Chloe sets up a spiritual purification ritual, where we waft incense around the main switchboards. Arthur stands by the fire extinguisher, looking like he wants to throw up. I stroll over and tell him to participate and let go of his inner darkness. He grumbles that the ash particles are going to destroy the cooling fans. Tell him he is being incredibly dense and resistant to growth. He points to a massive black cabinet and begs us not to go near the primary routing server. I swear to him we are cleansing every single inch of this building. Tell him we are spiritually untethering the network. Month 3 hits, and the energy is incredible gross. Profits dipped 18%, but inner peace is at an all-time high. The fresh talent absolutely adores the floor plan. They spend their entire shift in the safe space corner, drinking matcha and unpacking their childhoods. Zero actual software is being pushed, but the brainstorming sessions are legendary. The company Discord is just exploding with heart reacts, mental health check-ins, and astrology memes pop into the dev channel. Used to be strictly for patch notes and server latency warnings. Now it's Lily asking if anyone else feels triggered by the terminal output. Being read, Taylor replies that Red is aggressive and demands they patch the console to display calming lavender text. Lily says she is logging off for the afternoon because the server hum is misaligning her astrological chart. I beam with pride at the psychological safety we've built. Then the external complaints start rolling in. Get a furious call from a dispatcher in Idaho named Bob. Bob screams that his truckers are being routed straight into a local reservoir. Pull up the client dashboard. Tell him the team recently overhauled the navigation. I, the new devs, decided that physical roads are tools of oppression and removed all asphalt mapping. Bob yells that his drivers have 18-wheelers stuck in literal mud pits. Suggest he tells his crew to trust their inner compass. Bob immediately hangs up and voids our partnership. There goes $45,000 in monthly recurring revenue. Pull everyone into a circle chat. Softly explain that we need to harmonize our moral compass with client retention. Taylor snaps XIR fingers and says, capitalism is a disease. We must starve. Claims losing accounts just proves the clients couldn't handle our elevated frequency. I nod in agreement, but point out we still need liquid capital to afford the organic kombucha. On tap, the room collectively sighs in deep understanding. Lily volunteers to glance at the map, algorithm, but refuses to reinstate highways. Says she will implement paths of gentle suggestion. Instead, month 4 arrives and I hit a massive roadblock. The infrastructure is collapsing way faster than our positive energy can patch it. The absolute only people who actually know how to repair the damage are the boomer leftovers Arthur, Greg, Mike, and Dan couldn't legally terminate them because they held all the core administrative passwords exiled them to a cramped corner by the freight elevator. We dubbed it the quarantine sector, erected a thick acoustic wall so the new staff wouldn't be poisoned by their presence. I wander back there one Tuesday. It's like stepping into a parallel dimension. 0 salt lamps, 0 incense, just blinding fluorescent tubes and 4 dudes typing in pure dead silence. Arthur has 5 screens stacked, lines of green terminal text flying by at light speed. He looks like a walking corpse. Bags under his eyes dragging to the floor, call out his name. He doesn't even blink. Tell him the client portal is taking a full minute to authenticate users. He says he is well aware, flatly explains. Lily swapped the standard enter button with a 60 megabyte 4K video of a cascading waterfall. Tell him the cascading waterfall video represents a fluid user journey. He shoots back that it represents a massive bandwidth bottleneck. Says he is trying to compress the file, but lacks right permissions for the front-end repository. Explain Taylor locked the repo to preserve the UI's aesthetic purity. Arthur tells me to enjoy the 60-second wait time, then ask him why he can't just turbocharge the back-end database to compensate. He slowly blinks and says, that isn't how physics or computing works. Says you cannot mathematically bypass a 60 megabyte video file. Let out a deep sigh at his rigid tech bro mindset, wander back to the progressive wing of the building. Chloe is hosting a primal weeping session by the kombucha tap. Everyone is sobbing openly at the drywall. I join in, and honestly it feels incredibly cathartic. Month 5 rolls around and disaster strikes it. Is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving absolute peak chaos. For grocery supply chains, network traffic is surging by 500%. Arrive at dawn, carrying a box of fair trade agave scones. Gather the fresh talent in the meditation corner. Tell everyone it is a massive day, and we need our auras completely aligned. Skylar raises a hand, looking deeply distressed, says, the hyper-capitalist energy of holiday food. Hoarding is causing severe anxiety. Announces he is logging out to protect his spiritual core. Lily instantly agrees and says she needs a mental health day to ground herself. Start internally hyperventilating, plead with them that we need a fully staffed war room. Today tell them, if the CPU loads spike, we have to manually reroute the bandwidth. Taylor scoffs and says, Arthur thrives on mind-numbing manual labor. I stammer that. Arthur and his team are already swamped. Suddenly, the overhead salt lamps violently flicker. A deafening klaxon starts wailing through the floor. It isn't the fire drill, it is the master hardware alarm. Means the core processors are physically redlining Sprint to the primary diagnostic monitor. The entire screen is a wall of flashing crimson error. 502. Bad gateway primary tables completely locked out. My cell phone starts vibrating off the desk. The reception landlines are ringing. Simultaneously, Chloe's phone is blowing up. Absolute unmitigated pandemonium dash. Over to Lily's floor cushion. Demand she fix it and ask what is happening. Lily is violently sobbing at her. MacBook screen screams that the terminal is microaggressing her, points at the console spitting out fatal kernel, panic in bold red uppercase text, says it is raising its voice at her, tell her to just type a rollback command. She cries that she doesn't know what that means, and usually just unplugs her monitor. She literally reaches for the power cord of her external display screen that it won't fix the remote servers. Spin around and yell for Taylor to check the master database. Taylor is curled into a tight fetal position under a hammock, hyperventilating about the metaphysical weight of the data. Packets crying that the information is too heavy and crushing. Exire spirit, look around at my beautiful, empathetic squad of digital storytellers. They are completely and utterly paralyzed. The infrastructure is literally melting down. We are hemorrhaging $15,000 every 60 seconds. Realize I have zero alternatives left. Choke down my massive ego, smooth out my organic cotton cardigan, march to the back of the building toward the quarantine sector, shove my way past the thick acoustic barriers. The screaming klaxons are instantly muffled. It is perfectly quiet back here. Arthur, Greg, Mike, and Dan are sitting in a circle of rolling chairs. Nobody is typing. They are eating bologna and American cheese on cheap white bread. Arthur slowly chews his sandwich and looks up. Calmly mentions the grid just collapsed. I am literally gasping for air. Scream that it is an apocalypse and they have to intervene immediately. Arthur takes a long sip of his store-brand cola. Reminds me it is currently their designated lunch hour. I screech that the entire network is dying. Mike points out, I strictly enforce the uncompensated 60-minute break when I slash their overtime bonuses. Yell that I will pay them double, triple, whatever they want. Dan says they don't want a bonus. They want basic human dignity. I frantically insist they are highly respected pillars of this company. Arthur raises an eyebrow, brings up the company-wide memo I sent last week, the one where I called raw programming a tool of oppression and claimed true coding is spiritual vulnerability. My face turns burning hot mumble that I was just trying to validate the new hire's journeys. Arthur wipes mustard off his chin with a paper towel, tells me to go. Ask the validated hires to patch the kernel. Panic reminds me they don't even know how to open a command prompt. Greg actually laughs out loud into his sandwich drop, all pretenses, and literally beg them as one human being to another. Arthur looks around at his crew. They share a silent look, the look of abused shelter dogs who finally saw the front gate swing wide open. Arthur looks back at me and says, "Absolutely not." I scream, "What do you mean?" "No, it is your job." Arthur stands up and stretches. Says it literally isn't his job anymore. Reminds me I stripped their master admin privileges last month because I claimed hoarding root passwords was toxic. Gatekeeping shriek that I will reinstate their access. Right? This second, Mike points out the main authorization node is actively on fire. Says I need root access to grant. Root access a totally inescapable paradox. Unless... Dan murmurs. I latch on to the single sliver of hope and ask, unless what Dan says, unless someone physically walks into the hardware room and pulls the master breakers, reminds me I installed a voice print padlock on that specific door, coded exclusively to my vocal frequencies. Tell Arthur let's go and grab his shoulder. He violently rips his arm away, flatly refuses to step foot in that room. I demand to know why he reminds me. I converted the server room into an active Bikram yoga studio to maximize space. Says it is currently sitting at 110 degrees points to his thick arcade hoodie, and says he isn't dressed for a sweat lodge. Lose my absolute mind and threaten to fire them all and sue for corporate sabotage. Arthur stares right through. My soul tells me to go ahead and pull the trigger. Asks who is going to run the national grid tomorrow. Lily and her healing crystals sits heavily back down in his chair and slips his noise-canceling headset over his ears. I just stand there completely frozen in the harsh fluorescent light, hit with the soul-crushing realization that I am not actually the captain of this ship. I am just a loud passenger, and the crew has officially mutinied sprint to the hardware suite myself. Yell my authorization phrase at the voice lock door, clicks open, and a literal furnace blast hits my face. Air reeks of scorched wiring and eucalyptus oil. Stumble inside, hacking my lungs out. The main processor towers are absolutely screaming, cooling fans spinning so hard they sound like jet engines. Instantly spot the bottleneck somebody. Definitely Skylar. Draped a massive woven macrame dream catcher over the primary exhaust vent, supposedly to catch the negative digital frequencies. The nylon threading has completely melted into the turbine blades. Grab it and try to rip it free. Searing hot plastic burns. My palm shriek in pain and drop it. Watch the blinking green activity lights start stuttering one by one. They just flicker and die. The deafening roar grinds down to a halt. The room goes totally silent. The absolute sickening silence of a completely bricked network. Slide down the server rack and collapse onto the linoleum. Whip out my phone and pull up the NASDAQ ticker. Our stock is doing a literal swan dive notifications, blowing up from grocery chains. Apex flow is dead whole, fleets are stranded. Thanksgiving supply lines are completely ruined. Moving contracts to our rivals stare at the puddle of melted macrame. It's totally over. I single-handedly nuked. The operation didn't just smash the glass ceiling. I took a wrecking ball to the foundation and crushed myself in the rubble 24 hours later. The investors summon an emergency summit on Microsoft Teams because our internal servers are completely fried. Sitting at my desk, hair a mess. Cardigan smelling like a campfire. The lead stakeholder logs on. I immediately start rambling that I can explain everything, claim it was a coordinated mutiny and the boomer devs refuse to do their jobs. The stakeholder cuts me off, says they already had a long chat with Arthur, and Arthur was 100% correct stakeholder, says they pulled the internal memos, points out. I hired a literal crystal healer to manage cloud security, mentions I disabled the brute force protection to make the login screen feel more welcoming. I try to argue I was democratizing the workplace culture. He says I vaporized 3 decades of market dominance in 5 months. Ask what the next steps are. He coldly tells me, my resignation has already been processed. As of this morning, ask who is stepping in to replace me. Snark that it's probably some corporate dinosaur stakeholder, confirms Arthur has been named interim president, says Arthur already called Kevin and the rest of the exiled crew back to their desks. I desperately bring up our progressive demographic ratios. Stakeholder stares through the webcam and says, the only ratio that matters to the board is server. Uptime tells me goodbye, call disconnects. Start throwing my belongings into a cardboard box. Wander out to the main floor. The progressive dream team is already packing up their succulents. None of them look devastated. They just look completely checked out. Lily is leaning against a hammock on her phone, complaining loudly that the energy matrix in this building got super toxic anyway. Tells whoever she is calling that she is booking a spiritual retreat to Tulum. Realize right then, they literally did not care about the mission. They were just leeches draining the corporate host. Drag my box. Past the quarantine sector. The acoustic barriers are completely torn down. Arthur is standing on top of a filing cabinet, barking commands like a general, yelling at Kevin to flush the routing cache, ordering Greg to forcefully bypass the broken UI and bridge the data to the backup farm in Portland, says let's get this monster breathing again. The atmosphere is buzzing. It isn't gentle, it isn't mindful, it is harsh, fast, and completely aggressive. Arthur spots me walking by. He holds up a hand and the typing stops. Floor goes dead quiet. He looks down at me and softly mentions, building security. Is waiting by the lobby. Doors turns his back to me and addresses the team, yells to drop the empathy parameters from the master branch and inject the raw logic arrays. The guys literally start hollering and cheering, do a walk of shame to the elevator, completely alone. Hit the lobby button, stare at my reflection in the polished steel doors. I don't see a pioneer. I see a little kid who thought she could captain a battleship just because she bought a nice captain's hat. Half a year passes living in a cramped basement unit in Tacoma. My uncle refuses to return my calls completely. Radioactive in the tech industry. My name is literally a joke on blind forums, Stanford MBA, classes study. My tenure is a cautionary tale, the apex collapse. What happens when pure ideology tries to rewrite basic infrastructure, stuck applying for entry-level gigs, front desk, call center, food service land, a walkthrough at a local craft roastery. The shift lead is a 20-year-old kid with a neck tattoo. He scans my resume, sees president of Apex Flow Analytics whistles, and asks if that wasn't the place that basically self-destructed last year. I stiffen up and tell him it was a highly nuanced transition period. He laughs and says his older cousin actually codes. There now says the place is an absolute powerhouse. Now mentions they scrubbed out all the useless dead weight and are hitting historical profit margins. Tosses a damp apron at my chest. Tells me I can start on the industrial sink and to try not to shatter any glasses. Tie the apron around my waist. It reeks of sour milk, and old grounds trudge to the back room and start aggressively scrubbing ceramic mugs. Feel my phone vibrate in my pocket. LinkedIn notification. It's a trending post from Arthur. It's a group selfie of the core Apex engineering team, entirely middle-aged dudes holding cheap IP. A's in the server room, they look completely exhausted, incredibly nerdy, and absolutely thrilled. Caption just reads, "Push the holiday patch. Perfect stability, no nonsense, job done." The replies are flooded with industry guys congratulating them. Top comment says, "Nature is finally healing. Stare down into the murky gray dishwater. Look at my own hands. Expensive manicured nails all cracked and peeling. Start scrubbing a saucer harder and harder until it literally snaps in half in my palm. Stare at the jagged ceramic pieces. For the first time in my life, I don't try to mentally blame the plate for internalizing weakness. I don't blame the soapy water for creating an oppressive environment, just accept the cold, hard fact that I squeezed too hard and dropped it, and no amount of positive energy is going to glue it back together. My face when I finally understand, meritocracy isn't some invisible social construct. It is a brutal law of nature, and I was too weak to survive it.